Happy anniversary, beloved nerds! We have the perfect gift for you. Dave and I are handing out our awards for the best things in the nerd world from this past year. The inaugural celebration of the Nerdies starts now. Welcome into a very fancy, very elegant affair. The very first Nerdies. Dave and I are here to award our picks for the best things to emerge from Nerd Realm this past year. Now, a lot of shows may do this in December, but this felt like the right way for us to celebrate a year's worth of episodes with you, our listeners. Dave, can you believe that it's been an entire year, 52 episodes?
I can't believe it's not been an entire 10 years considering, what this year has been like with the pandemic and everything. But I will say this, it is a point of pride, I think, to me, how well you and I work together, Kris, and really that we've been able to, start a podcast from scratch and then produce 52 weekly episodes on time, always hitting our schedule, always hitting our mark, never missing an episode, never having to take a hiatus, and just pressing forward like a couple of pros. So I'm incredibly proud of this show and what we've accomplished over the first year, and I cannot wait to see what we do with year two.
And in the midst of a pandemic, now, yes, we were home for most of it, but that doesn't mean that there weren't hiccups along the way. There are lots of times that Dave was editing at 11:30 on a Sunday night to get it ready to go Monday morning. There were some days that we didn't even get to decide on what our episode was going to be until Friday, so we did it. So I'm very excited to see where we go in the future, and I'm very, very proud of that we came in and we made a commitment. We absolutely did it. So we don't necessarily have the resources for this episode to put on as elaborate of a celebration as perhaps our Krakoan brethren with the Hellfire Gala. But give us a few years and we'll round up a few sponsors, and then watch out, Emma. We're coming for the crown, darling. But I like to think that one of the best features of what we do here on the Byword is our consistency, and that means that nerd news must precede our award ceremony. Just think of it as our version of the red carpet interviews before the real show begins. Nerd news. Dave, is that a little excess testosterone I smell in the air? It just got really manly in here all of a sudden.
Did it get he-manly? Because that's not just a little excess testosterone. I brought a couple of barrels of it. Dude, the Masters of the Universe are back. Kevin Smith is producing a Masters of the Universe series called Masters of the Universe Revelations for Netflix. And the series recently showed off its first stills. And I am so psyched about this, man. So Smith said in a statement, "Our show is set up as the next episode in the Legacy 80s animated series that aired from 1983 to 1985. This is a continuation of that story. We're playing with the original mythology and characters, and revisiting and digging deeper into some of the unresolved storylines. Visually, we also made the conscious decision to lean into the Masters of the Universe line of toys for inspiration as well. Look, dude, I love that original series, no matter how poorly some of it has aged, particularly the animation. I adore the entire Masters of the Universe franchise. I even totally embraced the reboot and reinvention of She-Ra that recently aired on Netflix. I thought it was a fantastic series and a really interesting direction to take that character. But there is something deeply, deeply special to me about the original He-Man and the Masters of the Universe show, and the idea of just literally picking up that show and continuing it instead of reimagining or rebooting it. That is such a novel approach these days. Everything has to be rebooted and reimagined. So picking up where we left off in 1985, dude, that is incredible. Now, design-wise, there are some clear differences, but it seems very much in the spirit of the original show. And then there's a fantastic voice cast that includes Mark freaking Hamill as Skeletor. I mean, just take my money already, Netflix. I feel like this whole project was designed to tickle my nostalgia bone. I cannot wait for it to drop. It's supposed to premiere on July 23rd, and it cannot get here fast enough, Kris.
So, as I've previously mentioned, I was born in '88, so this completely missed me. And growing up, I had friends who were older, who were huge fans of it, and I always felt like it was a party that I missed out on, like I didn't get an invite or something, and I was just kind of left outside in the cold. So I'm very, very intrigued by the fact that it picks up where it left off. I think that's a really novel idea, like you said, in today's world of reboots and going back before and all this stuff. And one of the things that it's really starting to wear on me, particularly in nerd media, is never going forward with anything. We've talked about this extensively with Star Wars. I want to really dig the Bad Batch in the way that I did Clone Wars and Rebels, but I think that I've reached my limit of playing in the same kind of timeline. Even The Mandalorian, as great as it is, that's one of the things that keeps it from being over the top to me, is it's just the same kind of stuff. It's like the missions that you didn't get to see in the original films, and we're just kind of still playing with the same toys. I want something new. And I've used this quote before, but it just really sticks with me. From Luke Cage, it's always forward, never backward. Like I like progress. I like new things and going forward. And I like how this kind of embraces both the nostalgia and the newness of it. I thought that the stills that we were given were absolutely gorgeous, to the point where I'm like, okay, who's got it streaming, the old stuff? Because I want to hit the ground running in July. So I'm gonna have to figure out a way to binge all of this in time. But I'm super excited for this, and I'm ready to crash this party.
Dude, I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't know if you should really binge all this. Maybe watch a couple episodes to get the effect and then read the rest on the internet. Because I'm not kidding when I say some of this hasn't aged very well. Particularly, I think the animation, there's a lot of, reused assets, constantly the same sort of animations with just backgrounds swapped out and the like. It's the kind of stuff that you don't really notice as a kid, but as an adult, it sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, there's a huge sort of, Conan the Barbarian in space charm to this whole thing. But at the same time, it's very much a product of its time, which again is why I'm so psyched for this show, because bringing more modern sensibilities and modern animation to this concept, dude, I think it's going to rock it.
I also am super excited, and I can't believe I haven't checked it out yet, but I've heard nothing but glowing reviews of the She-Ra program as well. And if memory serves, didn't Brian Q. Miller tell us that he was working on another series for Netflix?
That is correct, and this one has released a promotional poster so far, and I think it's sort of CG animated, and it is a reboot, a reimagining of Masters of the Universe. So there are literally two different Netflix projects. This one, which is a continuation of the original, and then the one Brian Q. Miller is working on, which is a reimagining and reboot.
Now, not to tip our hand too much of future discussion points, but every time that I sit and look at my Netflix subscription as it continues to rise, and I'm like, why am I even here? You lost the contract with The Office to Peacock, and you cancel shows that do well, well before they should be, and then they come out with something like this, and we're like, oh yeah, this is why I still have a Netflix subscription.
Yeah, I mean, they do really good original content occasionally, and when they do, they knock it out of the park. I think, the sin of letting Mystery Science Theater 3000 go is almost unforgivable, but then, they bring me back with Masters of the Universe, so I'm still there. They're still getting my money. There might come a point when they don't, but as of right now, there's still lots of stuff to love on Netflix, Kris.
Well, that is one of the nerd commendations that you gave to me before we ever even thought about making this show, that has been nearest and dearest to my heart, and I am eternally grateful for Mystery Science Theater 3000, of which I am a proud backer on Kickstarter of that crowdfunding. So I am super excited to dive right back into the Gizmoplex.
Now, Chris, should I be bringing a gun to a knife fight right now, or what's going on with your nerd news here?
Oh man, so this may not fall precisely under the umbrella of nerd media, but I'm going to color outside the lines because it does feature a lot of familiar faces for nerds, including Rian Johnson, who directed the second greatest Star Wars film ever. A few months back, it was reported that Johnson, alongside producer Ron Bergman and actor Daniel Craig, yes, that Daniel Craig, sealed a record-breaking deal with Netflix to produce 2 sequels to the 2019 smash hit Knives Out, a film that completely blew me away and immediately now stands as one of my all-time favorites. This week, we received a plethora of casting news for the upcoming film, including a lot of faces that will be familiar to fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Dave Bautista, the former professional wrestler who portrays Drax the Destroyer in the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, was announced to be joining the film this past Monday. That news was followed subsequently by more big names later on. Edward Norton, the former Incredible Hulk, Janelle Monáe, who does not have an MCU tie but is an incredibly talented musician and actor, and I'm excited to see her involved as well, and Agatha herself, Catherine Hahn. Needless to say, I could not be more excited for this film. The first one featured many breathtaking acting performances, particularly from lead actress Ana de Armas, Captain America gone spoiled rich boy wearing a sweater, Chris Evans, and Daniel Craig, who traded in his 007 credentials for one of the most captivating portrayals that I've ever seen on screen in Detective Benoit Blanc. The way that he even nails the Southern Cajun Bayou accent is just mind-blowing. I'm particularly excited to see the news regarding Han's addition to the cast. I feel that she is truly an underappreciated master of the craft, pun fully intended. Not only was she magnificent in WandaVision, but she was an incredible Doc Ock in Into the Spider-Verse, and I still ride or die for Step Brothers, and she gave us one of the best, greatest comedic supporting roles as Alice in that flick. So I am super, super excited. I love detective shows, detective flicks, Whodunit, and Knives Out was just incredible. And, you know, speaking of Netflix, here we go. They broke the bank and they secured my subscription for years to come.
Yeah, you know, I feel awful for saying this, but I still have not seen Knives Out. The movie looks like a blast, and all the reasons that you've given for why it should be up in your wheelhouse, it's why it should be in my wheelhouse too. I love detective stories. I'm probably, you know, one of the biggest fans of the old show Columbo that you'll probably ever meet, especially considering my age. I'm not really in the age group to have fallen in love with Columbo and Peter Falk's performance as strongly as I did, but you know, I did. So this should be right up my alley. And the cast is fantastic in this, and I'm really glad to see the movie's getting a sequel. I really need to get with the program and just sit down and watch this movie already, Chris.
I really, really appreciate it, and I know that you know is a silly statement for me to say about Rian Johnson, but we'll get there in a couple weeks. And it's really interesting for me, and it was refreshing for me to be able to see him have a complete vision for a film and not have any kind of other hands in the cookie jar. So I really did appreciate that. And like I said, the cast is just out of this world. I didn't even mention like Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Shannon, Christopher Plummer in one of his final performances is just out of this world, just incredible. But just one more question. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a huge Columbo fan here as well. All right, that wraps up our nerd news segment, and now the moment that you all have been waiting for, a year in the making. When we return from our first break, we're going to be handing out our nerdies, our awards for the best in nerddom. Stick around.
Oh, g'day.
How's it going?
Nice to meet you.
I'm Stu.
I'm Chris.
I'm Dave.
And we're the Pool Boys.
We're the hosts of Pool Boys Recommend. It's a podcast where we suggest stuff to each other.
We do it,
and then we review it.
You remember, like, show and tell at school?
It's kind of like that, but this week I had a mental breakdown.
You're a music lover, Stu, okay?
I am, yes.
What is this going to be?
And so I want you to listen to B-52's seminal classic Love Shack 100 times.
Oh my God.
You know, it's just when you're going to sleep, when you're having a shower. 100 times. You can start playing it now, maybe.
Oh my God.
You're only yourself to blame if next episode I come back on the air and I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going?
Here's another cheeky little clip for you.
Oh, this podcast is great.
That was a dramatization of you enjoying the podcast in the future.
When you check out
Pool Boys Recommend. Find us on Spotify and Wooshka.
Stitcher and
Apple
Google
Podcasts, even our own website.
You know where to get podcasts. Come on.
You're listening to one now.
All right, welcome back to a very special Byword Big Talk. This is the first annual Nerdies. Yes, that's a riff off of the Dundies. I'm always going to sneak in an Office reference whenever I can. The more not-so-subtle hints that Dave needs to start watching the US version, the better. So we have our own categories that we've established. They are Best Ongoing Comic Series, Best Back Issue Discovery. We've had a lot of extra time to read comic books. Best Indie Creation. We wanted to show some love to, things that came out that were not Marvel or DC. The Little Comic That Could. The idea behind this is it's a title that is just starting out or it's not getting a whole lot of love, and we really are rooting for this one to be successful. Game of the Year pretty much speaks for itself. Best in Shows. Best Nerd Flick. There weren't a lot, so I really struggled with this one. Best Actress, and that can be show or film, whatever. Best Actor, same scenario here. Best Streaming Content, Writer of the Year, comic-wise, and Artist of the Year, comic-wise. Now, that it could be outside of comics, but that's usually where we're focused.
And I do want to point out, Chris, to our listeners, if your favorite doesn't win one of our nerdies, please be aware that our nerdy awards here are completely colored by our personal experience. If something that you really love doesn't get a nerdy, it may very well be that we just haven't consumed that particular media yet. So when we're handing out these nerdies, this is not all encompassing. This comes directly from our own personal experiences. What are the things that we consumed over the last year? What did we interact with over the last year? It's not everything that was released, since frankly we can't actually read, watch, and experience every single thing that's been released.
And I think that's one of the important things about a segment like Nerd Commendations. It's just bringing to light so many things, with so many forms of entertainment, whether it's television, streaming, film, comics, literature, even graphic novels is a completely different category that I haven't really tapped into that much. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to miss. And so we just posted on both our Instagram and our Twitter page, a prep for this episode. So be sure to fire off in the comments your nominations for these awards as well. So brings us back to our first category, the first ever nerdy awarded. Dave, what is your best ongoing comic series?
And the nerdy goes to The Immortal Hulk. My nerdy for best ongoing series has to go to The Immortal Hulk. This series, written by Al Ewing and with art by Joe Bennett, is absolutely fantastic. I cannot overstate how good this series is. Ewing goes places with the Hulk other writers never have. It's really exploring new territory, which is so difficult in superhero comics with, characters that are as long in the tooth as someone like the Hulk. The horror vibes, the complex storytelling, the fantastic art. It's just a total package, Chris. Now, the series will end later this year with issue number 50, and I, for one, am going to be incredibly sad to see it go. Now, I am not fully caught up to the series yet, but man, so far as I've gotten into it, it is so fantastic, and it definitely deserves the nerdy.
Yeah, I'm super excited to check this one out. So my first exposure to Al Ewing's work was reading the current ongoing that he's doing for Marvel, Sword, which of course is in the X line of books. And I just absolutely adore that. It's mutants in space, so it's like amazing. It's two of the things that I love, just completely smushed together. And the way, particularly the issue number 3, where he featured Eden Fezzi Manifold, was just mind blowing. So I immediately fell in love with his work. Other friends have recommended it to me as well. So I'm, at the precipice of starting a complete Al Ewing Marvel read through. I'm right in the middle of one that is sure to be on my nerd commendation list very soon. His Mighty Avengers from 2014. So I will be reading Immortal Hulk before you know it, and I'm super excited because I've heard nothing but rave reviews like yours.
Yeah, it is absolutely fantastic. Now, Kris, best ongoing comic book series. Who gets the nerdy from you this year?
My first nerdy will go to, surprise, surprise, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Currently written as of issue 101 through current by Sophie Campbell, with story consultation by Kevin Eastman himself and Tom Waltz, with art by Sophie Campbell as well. In addition, Jody Nishijima, Rhonda Pattison with colors and art as well, and Nelson Daniel. I feel like we have waxed poetic about this series so many times over the past year. And I reached a real fork in the road with issue 100 as Tom Waltz and Kevin Eastman kind of bowed out as the primary writers for the series. And I had a little bit of trepidation with Sophie Campbell coming on. I had not experienced any of her work prior, so I wasn't familiar with her work, but I could not be happier. In fact, this might be a bold statement. I think it's even better than the first 100 issues. It's taking it in a new direction. The entire concept of Mutant Town and this entire neighborhood of Manhattan being completely just kind of quarantined and encapsulated, with all those individuals being turned into mutants and seeing those different animals come to life. It's fascinating. There's like group therapy sessions of people pining after what their life used to be, and like their parents will no longer have contact with them because they're mutants now. The character of Jenica is just absolutely fascinating. I can't wait to check out her 2 miniseries, Jenica 1 and 2. It's just like it breathes new life into these characters. You talk about, Hulk. The turtles aren't quite there as far as longevity as the Hulk, but like I really have such a respect for people who can come into like an IP, if you will, that has been around so long, and they just keep it interesting and keep it new and refreshing. Like I said before, always forward. And I just, every issue that comes out is just, I have to grab it immediately and run it. So, and read it. So I absolutely adore this ongoing series. It is probably one of the best reading experiences I've had in comics, and it is absolutely deserving of my nerdy.
Now, see, I can wholeheartedly echo that. And now I will freely admit that I have not gotten to the issue 100 mark yet in my read-through of the series. So I have not experienced a changeover in the creative team. However, I think the IDW series of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is probably the best Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. I mean, but between, the cartoons and movies and all the various interpretations that are out there, I find that this series has sort of synthesized all the best things of the various interpretations and put them into a singular product, a single storyline. And for that, I absolutely adore the series. So I love it, and I wholeheartedly second your nerdy for that, Kris.
And I will just say, it's sold out on the IDW website as far as print, but the A cover for issue 101 with the black background and all of them just standing there, I mean, it's just one of the most gorgeous covers I've seen. It's the wallpaper on my phone right now. So I could not be happier. It's one of the most fun and rewarding experiences I've had as a nerd. Now, Dave, your second nerdy, our category is best back issue discovery. You know, we had a lot of time at home to discover new comics, and with the new DC Universe Infinite, with Marvel Unlimited, with Comixology Unlimited, with the digital libraries at our disposal, what did you discover?
Well, I'm going to be completely honest. I discovered nothing from any digital libraries. I went to my own library of back issues in my basement and discovered something that I hadn't spent a whole lot of time reading. So my nerdy goes to Witchblade Tomb Raider #1. So I'm actually working on a series of articles for my website, thatnerddave.com, subtle plug. And these articles are basically dealing with the Tomb Raider character and the history of that character in the comic books. I titled it Tomb Raider Thursday, since articles generally release like every couple of weeks on Thursdays. And in the course of my research, I came across a book that totally holds up by modern standards. It was super enjoyable. It's probably my favorite back issue I've read recently. So I think, yeah, it totally deserves a nerdy. So Lara Croft was introduced to the comics world in a series of 3 one-shot crossovers with Witchblade. And the best of the bunch by far is the second one. The one-shot was co-written by Michael Turner and Bill O'Neill. Turner returned to pencil duty from the first crossover. It also featured Joe Weems and Jason Corder on inks and Jonathan D. Smith on colors. Rounding out the creative team was Dennis Heisler to letter the book. So Sarah Pizzini, the Witchblade, receives an invite from Lara Croft to vacation in London. Upon arriving, she's immediately mixed up in one of Lara Croft's adventures. There's a wealthy perfumer who steals an artifact, the Idol of Bastet, from Lara in hopes of gaining power. Instead, she accidentally summons the Egyptian goddess herself, leaving Lara and Sarah to fight against this ancient force. The book features great action, fun banter, fantastic art by the late, great Michael Turner himself. It surpasses the first crossover, as well as the third and final one, which was sort of weak sauce in my book. So ultimately, as far as back issues go, this felt really like sort of a supernatural tinged buddy cop story, right, with the fun banter and the strong action. And it's just a great single issue story that resolves itself very nicely by the last page. And that's sort of a lost art to me anyways, being able to tell a complete story in a single issue. So for that alone, just a great back issue, totally deserving of a nerdy, Kris.
I think this is probably the most on brand for you, Dave. This was the least surprising award, even though I know this comic I did not know this comic existed. Like, that is a very much a Dave type of interest. Two strong female leads. You know, it sounds so cool, and it sounds like a rip roaring good time. I will say that you immediately perked my ears up when you said the goddess Bastet in Egypt. But, you know, as a huge Black Panther fan, I know all about that goddess, and so I am definitely going to be checking this one out.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, dude. Really is. All right, so back issues, Kris. Who gets the nerdy for you?
Well, this has been a previous nerd commendation, and we also are repeat offenders when it comes to praising Tom Taylor. But X-Men Red, I discovered this past year upon many recommendations by my fellow mutant friends, and it did not disappoint. In fact, it's probably one of my favorite X-Men reads of all time. It's just beautiful. It's inspirational. It's hopeful. Taylor, once again, just absolutely nails and understands the characters that he's working with. And Mahmoud Asrar does the art, and he's one of my absolute favorites. I believe it's issue number 3 that has Nightcrawler, my personal favorite, on the cover with a beard. It's just glorious. But I love this series so much, and it really did something that not a lot of X-Men comics do, unfortunately, and it really gave Jean some agency. She is not included with Scott Summers, Cyclops, and all in this book. She really gets time to breathe and to have, some individuality and some agency in her character. That is not completely intertwined with Scott or the Phoenix Force or Emma Frost or anything like that. So it was a breath of fresh air and one of my favorite X-Men stories that I've ever read. So X-Men Red gets my nerdy for best back issue discovery.
Not to give our listeners a sense of deja vu, but Kris, this might be the most you on brand nerdy award of all the awards that are on the list. So here naturally is an X-Men book, which I know you've been kind of pushing really hard to get me more into the X-Men, and I had an enjoyable experience with Whedon's run on Astonishing, and I'm really enjoying reading Grant Morrison's run on New X-Men as well. So I think I'm totally going to give this a try. I have not done that yet. But you keep singing the praises of this book. Maybe you end up giving me this one for homework at some point. I don't know, but I think I'm going to make my way to it eventually, Kris.
Well, if anything else, it is only 11 issues, so it's compared to our 25 typical assignments. That would be light work.
I don't mind the occasional light work.
All right, Dave, we are stepping away from the big two for a bit. What is the best indie creation for you of the past year?
So when we talk indie creations, there's obviously a lot of different levels we can go to. I decided to interpret indie basically as not DC or Marvel. And so I settled on a book from Boom Studios that I've previously nerd commended that totally deserves a nerdy. And the nerdy goes to Something is Killing the Children. Now, I've sung the praises of this book before, and although it's on a short break right now, it is one of my favorite indie creations. I'm talking, of course, about the awesome book by James Tynion IV and art by Werther Dell'Edera. This is the stuff, guys. If you like horror, this is the book to read. From the official description, when the children of Archer's Peak begin to go missing, everything seems hopeless. Most children never return, but the ones that do have terrible stories. Impossible stories of terrifying creatures that live in the shadows. Their only hope of finding and eliminating the threat is the arrival of a mysterious stranger, one who believes the children and claims to see what they can see. Her name is Erica Slaughter. She kills monsters. That is all she does, and she bears the cost because it must be done. The book totally managed to capture my imagination. I read these sort of, trying to get caught up and went through like 13 issues in a single sitting. I love horror, and it's done perfectly here. If any book deserves a nerdy this year, it's definitely Something is Killing the Children. It was even originally announced to be a limited series and then was actually upgraded to ongoing. So I can't wait for the brief hiatus to be over and this book to come back with its second big major storyline, Kris.
Can we just talk about how Boom Studios is knocking it out of the park comic wise? And I'm just saying that because we've had the pleasure of having Ross Ritchie, the CEO and founder of the company, on this show. I really enjoy and I'm really excited about all the content that they're cranking out right now. I nerd commended Eve, which absolutely just captivated me and enraptured me last week. Something is Killing the Children has been definitely on my radar. I've heard great things about it. Our Instagram community just raves about it. Our friends on Instagram. It's a really, really hot book, as far as sales go. In addition, you've got Grant Morrison has released a book there as well that I picked up the first 2 issues for and haven't read yet, but it's on my to-read pile. Tom Taylor's got a book there. So it's really interesting to see these creators that we've seen their work at the big 2. James Tynion, another, is a big one at DC, but has that liberty at Boom Studios to kind of create their own story. So it's just cool to kind of have the best of both worlds. You get stories from Marvel and DC about the characters you love by very talented creators, but then they get to kind of step outside the box and build their own world with these books at Boom, and it's just fascinating to see develop and super exciting as a reader.
Yeah, Boom has definitely been knocking it out of the park. One of my favorite publishers right now, constantly trying new things, experimenting. It's really the publisher right now to keep probably the closest eye on for the kind of stuff they're producing.
Saladin Ahmed's Abbott 1973 is another one that I want to check out. We love good detective stuff, and that seems right up my alley.
Absolutely, man. All right, best indie creation, Kris. Can't wait to hear this one.
Oh, man. Well, we've had the great pleasure of having writer Stephanie Williams on this show, and her book, Living Heroes. I cheated a little bit. It's still an indie creation, features Marvel characters, but it features Marvel characters in the world, in the lens, if you will, of Living Single, which is a show that I grew up watching. A lot of actresses that I had major crushes on as a kid, if I'm being honest. But then they take these Marvel heroes that I adore as well, namely Storm, Misty Knight, She-Hulk, and what happens if they all live in the same apartment? Monica Rambeau, who has really caught on fire this year thanks to WandaVision. Some much needed light, pun intended, has been shed upon that wonderful character. So Stephanie Williams is the writer on that. Aaron O'Neill Jones does amazing artwork. It's really fun, kind of cartoony type thing. This is kind of stepping outside the box of the webcomic that the two of them collaborated on. But What If, though? And it's just a really fun kind of little book. If you can get the physical copy, I highly recommend it. It's like the size of a Jet magazine, like a Reader's Digest, and it's just super fun. The art is snappy. The storylines, it's kind of like a little anthology, kind of just like a physical manifestation, kind of, outgrowth of that webcomic. So it's just super fun, and it just really features these wonderful characters that we love so much in a different fashion. And it's really, really fun.
Stephanie Williams was one of my favorite guests on the show. She was so insightful and so interesting, and I can't wait to keep following her work. And you've recommended this to me before. It's another thing that's kind of slipped past me so far, and I've not had a chance to really check out. But just on just the strength of the conversations we had with her, it is definitely at the top of my list of something that I would need to check out. I can totally see why something like this would deserve a nerdy, Kris.
And by the way, I'm just super excited and to follow her success. After our interview, we spoke during that conversation about her feature in Marvel Voices Legacy, which was a fantastic little story about Monica Rambeau, grocery shopping with Thor and She-Hulk, which is just delightful. And now she has even some more, work that is yet to be revealed for Marvel. And even, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe she has some work coming up with a Wonder Woman story for DC. She's also kind of become kind of an authority figure when it comes to television media with shows like WandaVision, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. She's been featured on shows or on channels like Nerdist and really big things. So she's blown up, and it couldn't happen to a more awesome person.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, Dave, our next award is going to be given to the little comic that could. This is one that's either just starting out or maybe not be doing so well in sales, but they really, really like what they're doing, and we really want it to be successful. What is your little comic that could?
So this is a comic that flies under the radar of a lot of people because A, it's at a publisher that a lot of people don't pay attention to, specifically Titan Comics. B is based on a video game. And C was originally solicited to only be 4 issues long, but actually has slowly been building success and is still running right now. So my nerdy goes to Life is Strange. I'm a big fan of the Life is Strange series of video games. They play, as I've said before, a lot like a Telltale game, story-based, with an emphasis on player choice and consequences of those choices. The first game and its characters hold a really special place in my heart. Just the characters really sing, even though the dialogue is a little off occasionally and a little cringy and a little too hip. The characters rang so true that they stuck with me, I think, long after I completed the story. Now, the Life is Strange games always, switch up. Each game is sort of a unique story. It doesn't follow the same characters, which is a bit disappointing. So imagine my surprise then when I discovered that Titan Comics has been publishing a sequel comic book series to the first game. More amazingly, this Titan comic is just amazing. Written by Emma Viacelli and art by Claudia Leonardi, the book continues the story of Max Caulfield, who has the mysterious ability to rewind time, and, of course, her best friend, and depending on how you play the game, girlfriend, Chloe. With more time travel shenanigans, alternate realities, and truly emotional stakes, the book feels really like a worthy continuation of one of my all-time favorite video games. The fact that this book was originally treated almost as an afterthought and just keeps going, well, it's just really worthy of this nerdy, if you ask me, Kris.
That's super fascinating. And I remember you talking about that in a news segment, the video game in particular, and it was just amazing to me. I love Telltale games. I love, having that agency when I'm playing and having the impact that the decisions and actions that you take actually mean something. So this is something I definitely want to check out.
Yeah, it's the first one in particular, man, is such a fantastic game, and the characters are so captivating. And just the fact that I continue to be able to follow those characters in comic books it's deeply special to me, Kris. All right, the little comic that could, Kris, what are you going for here?
So my nerdy for the little comic that could is going to Children of the Atom, which is written by Vita Ayala, with art by Bernard Chang for issues 1 and 2, and Paco Medina in the most recent issue 3. Now, this book has been delayed. It was delayed for a full year for one reason or another, due to the pandemic or other developments with the X line of comics at Marvel. But I'm so glad that it exists. And it basically follows these group of teenagers that really idolize the X-Men and mutants, and so they have crafted their superhero personas as like an homage to those characters. Like, for example, you have Daycrawler, you have Cyclops Lass, names like that, which is a little bit corny and a little bit goofy, but they're teenagers. What do you expect? And what I really, really appreciate about this book is Vita Ayala themselves being a non-binary Afro-Latinx, creator, really just brings this breath of fresh air and authenticity to their characters. I thoroughly enjoyed, the John Rogers, Blue Beetle for Jaime Reyes, but one of the things that left me kind of uncomfortable, even though it was very much a product of its time coming out 15 years ago, is the dialogue seemed kind of cardboard and staunchy, and it seemed very much like a straight white male writing about an experience that was not his own, and it was respectful. It just kind of left me a little bit cold. And I'm very, very much feeling the opposite here. With my background in the Spanish language and the experiences that I've had in Latinx culture, Ayala really brings this breath of authenticity down to the little Spanglish isms, just the little intricacies and the detail in the character work of what it means to be, a Latinx kid growing up in New York, and just, what that environment looks like. It's very much a reflection of, 2021 America for a kid. Complicated relationships, complicated orientations. You have, characters that, have feelings for one another, but they're not sure if the other person does. So it's very much like a Degrassi, or like a teen drama, but on the pages of an X book. So it's been really fun to watch this finally develop, and I really hope that it continues to do well after all those unfortunate delays. I really hope they stick with this book. My heart was broken that they just unceremoniously canceled X Factor, another book that I recommended. So I hope that Children of the Atom does not get the same treatment.
Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic book, Kris, and I definitely need to check this out. Lots of mutant and X-Men related stuff gets thrown my way by you on the daily, but this sounds like something deeply special and definitely deserving of my time.
You know we love teenage protagonists that have a positive attitude.
That's exactly right, man.
All right, Dave, we're switching gears. We're putting the books away for now, and we are going to the video game realm for our one award with video games. Dave, what is your game of the year?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. This was tougher than I thought it was going to be, just for the fact that a lot of the games that I picked up this year for the first time are actually games that came out a couple of years ago. So trying to find something that literally falls in like the last 12 months of gaming, that was tough. It also doesn't help that I've been playing a lot less video games. I've been a lot busier than I have in the past. And so my list of options was a little narrow. That being said, I think I came across a really good one, and that is Final Fantasy VII Remake. I don't mind admitting freely that I absolutely adore JRPGs. I'll also admit that I missed out on some of the all-time greats when I bet on the N64 back in the day over the PlayStation 1. I don't regret that decision. Thank you, Zelda Ocarina of Time. I do wish I would have had a chance to play fantastic JRPGs like Final Fantasy VII when they first released. I did revisit the game, and although I see totally why it is held in such high esteem, I don't think it's always easy to revisit older games, especially sort of in the early dawn of when 3D graphics started coming into play. Times change, video games are constantly evolving, and what was innovative and fun back then can feel a little stiff and distracting today. So taking a story as fantastic as that of Final Fantasy VII, and then repackaging it with cutting-edge graphics, expanding the story into new and unexpected directions, now that's a worthy remake, Kris. So this PlayStation 4 exclusive Final Fantasy VII Remake was an absolute pitch-perfect dream come true. Although I wish there was a little more turn-based action in the game, since it's one of my favorite JRPG features. The battle system here is still enjoyable. The game looks great. The story is captivating. The additions to the story are absolutely spot on. In short, this is basically my favorite game that released within the last year. So, nerdy granted.
That's really refreshing to hear, because we've talked about remakes. Are they worth it? You know, what constitutes, you know, which ones you should or should not revisit, the length of time. So it's really good to hear that there's a positive one, because there are some that I've experienced myself that, you know, why did you do this? Why did you take all these resources and all these efforts, you know, in updating something that didn't really need it? So, I'm super excited to see that there's one that is worthwhile.
Yeah, and this one totally is, and different enough. I mean, it takes the core story, but it changes up the gameplay, the graphics, expands the story. This is how you do a remake properly. It's not a retread. It is a true remake, and that makes it pretty darn special. All right, Kris, nerdy for best video game. What you got?
So I had quite the opposite experience. I was fortunate enough to play quite a few video games over the past year. So this was a slam dunk for me. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, shocker pick for me, you know, the simp that I am for the Assassin's Creed franchise. But this game in particular, with the last three entries with Origins, with Odyssey, and now Valhalla, I absolutely love what they have done with this, I guess like a soft reboot of the franchise. It's taking it in a much needed new direction, away from Desmond Bishop and like the present day type of things. So I think the graphics and the scenic views that you experience throughout Norway and Scandinavia into, you know, the British Isles, and now with the DLC that just got released, I'm in Ireland. It's just absolutely breathtaking. It's a game where you just have to hit the pause button, or you do the cinematic view when you're riding your horse, and it's just breathtaking. It's just absolutely beautiful. Not to mention the continued, you know, retooling of the fighting system is super fun, down to like little features like, you know, in past games, like to regain health, you would, you know, just run away and hide, and then your health would regenerate, or you would have medicine or something like that. This is very on brand for a game that features Vikings. You have rations, and you will collect berries and you will collect, meat from chickens. If you kill a sheep, it will give you meat and it will refill your rations. And that's how you regain health. You use up one of your rations. So it's just the intricate details of this game are just immaculate. And I'm a sucker for mythology, and the way that they lean into that, you get to go to freaking Asgard, and you are Odin, and you interact with Thor, and it's not just the MCU iteration. I love Chris Hemsworth. We were born on the same day. He's my twin brother. But, seeing like a mythological version of Thor, not necessarily the Marvel iteration. You get to see Tyr and Loki in a different, reimagining, and it's just fascinating, and I love almost everything about this game, and the fact that they continue to release new content. The first DLC just released, so it's a very much a worthy investment and a game that I absolutely adore.
Yeah, and it sounds absolutely great. I've played a couple Assassin's Creed games, and I really like the direction that the series has been going since, I think Origins it was, when they kind of reinvented everything. Yep. Yeah, that's good stuff, man. It has sort of that RPG vibe to it, that really is perfect for me. I just haven't found the time to invest into this game yet, but it is at the top of my list of something that I just absolutely need to try, Chris.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where they go, because with these three, since the quote-unquote reboot, they've tackled the three major pantheons of gods and mythologies that Westerners are familiar with the Egyptians, with the Greek gods, and then now with the Norse gods. So I'm interested to see where they go from here. I'd like to see them scan the globe a little bit, kind of leave Europe and the Mediterranean, and kind of go to Asia somewhere, Africa, like a game centered around, let's say Mansa Musa's Africa. I think would be fascinating.
I totally agree with that. Now, the last thing I read is that there was a rumor that the next one would be based in Japan, and you would be playing as a samurai, which I think would be absolutely fascinating as well. So here's hoping.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we are now headed to TV shows or streaming shows. Dave, what is best in shows for you?
So this is something I think that is flying under a lot of people's radar. It's on the Sci-Fi Channel, but it's quality, which isn't always the case with the Sci-Fi Channel these days, regrettably.
What?
Yeah, I know. They gave me Farscape, Chris, so I can never quite hate them completely. All right, so the nerdy goes to Resident Alien. This one's based on a comic book, and it's one of my favorite shows, a bit of a sleeper. It absolutely weird in every possible way, so naturally it's right up my alley. I think you can best describe it as a science fiction mystery comedy drama. I hope that's enough words. The series stars Alan Tudyk, one of my absolute favorite actors, as an alien sent to wipe out humanity. He kills and takes on the identity of a pathology physician, and in his disguise, he becomes a part of a small town community and wrestles with this moral dilemma of his secret mission. Should he really wipe out humanity? They're kind of growing on him a little bit. And then, of course, there's a 9-year-old boy who can see him as an alien, can see through his disguise, and he's constantly in conflict with this 9-year-old, which is absolutely hilarious. This show is funny, it's clever, it's an absolute blast to watch. It's the perfect vehicle for the skills of Alan Tudyk. I remember him from, obviously from Firefly and the movie Serenity, but he was in a horror comedy, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, which, by the way, should really be my next nerd commendation. What a fantastic movie. And exactly like this, sort of weird and funny, but at the same time heartfelt. It's really the perfect vehicle for his skills. So this is nerdy worthy from the word go, and naturally Resident Alien gets my nerdy, Chris.
I was so delighted to see this on your list. Now, I haven't watched it yet, but it has been on my radar, kind of permeating, constantly blinking for so long. So I recently signed up for Peacock, and I think I can stream it on there. So I'm definitely checking this one out. Alan Tudyk is one of my all-time favorites. I have not watched, okay, get ready to gasp. I have not watched Firefly or Serenity yet.
Boo!
I don't know. Isn't that a Joss Whedon creation?
It is, but it may be his best if you ask me.
But so that gave me pause. But I adore his comedic work, particularly as Steve the Pirate from Dodgeball and Underdog Story. And here's one that I just recently watched about a year and a half ago, Death at a Funeral, the UK version. He plays like this. He like accidentally takes drugs or something, so he like gets high at a funeral. He disrobes completely, and he's sitting naked on the roof while they're having this funeral. It's glorious. Not to mention, he's one of the best parts of Rogue One is the voice for K2SO, and he's coming back in the Cassian Andor series. So I cannot wait to check this show out, and I adore Alan Tudyk. So this is definitely going to be on my to watch list.
So you're nerdy for Best in Shows. I'm very, very thrilled to see you do something a little horror related, Kris.
Well, I must say that probably the development that I'm most proud of and most thankful for this show is our pal Jeremy and loyal listener really kind of strong-arming me into suggesting the idea to get more horror influence, especially, with October approaching at that time. And you were all too happy to scoop that up and turn it into Nerd Nightmare. But, the surprise, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. So it definitely has kind of reshaped and my viewing capacity and opened a lot of doors to me. And I would not be able to give this nerdy to Lovecraft Country if not for that experience. I would not have checked it out. I would have been intrigued, but I'm too much of a chicken to check that out. But I'm so glad that I did, because it was far and away the best show. Now, there were a lot of candidates here. WandaVision could have been it, but I had a couple of nitpicks about that one. Falcon and the Winter Soldier was definitely a candidate. But this one I can give without any reservations. It was just absolutely fascinating. And, there are a lot of shows kind of like in the same breath of Lovecraft Country that are a real cringe watch, that there are, issues regarding race and the civil rights movement and things like that. But they turn into like a white savior trope. And they're really just uncomfortable. And I'm happy to say that this avoided a lot, if not all of those tropes. It really gave their black characters agency. And it was just really beautifully done. And that's, in large part to the incredible acting performances by Jonathan Majors and Jurnee Smollett. And it's just fascinating. And this is based on a novel, which I immediately scooped up and is on my to-read list. But Lovecraft Country on HBO Max is definitely, without a doubt, worth the subscription for HBO Max by itself. So if you're a fan of like Lovecraft, weird sci-fi, monster, horror tinge stuff, but like with a compelling story and like really inspiring character work, Lovecraft Country. I know I wax poetic about it for a good probably 20 minutes on my Nerd Commendation, but it is by far the best show that I've watched in the last year.
It's to my great shame that I have not checked this out yet, because A, I love horror, and B, I love Jurnee Smollett. I mean, her performance as Black Canary in Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey was probably my favorite part of that whole movie, and like they just need to bring her back in that role for another movie or an HBO Max series or something. Like I'm just shot to like number one fan of her work just because of that. So Lovecraft Country has been totally on my radar. I just haven't found the time to watch it yet, but it just looks so fantastic.
Yeah, I'll have much more to say on Jurnee Smollett in a moment. Spoiler alert. All right, Dave, this was a hard one for me because we didn't get a whole lot of content in this arena. What's your best nerd flick?
So, the way I see it, nerd flick doesn't necessarily mean Marvel or DC or superhero related or anything like that. You can be a nerd for a lot of different things. And as we've established time and time again, I'm a total nerd for horror. And so my nerdy winner is actually another one of my previous Nerd Commendations, the movie Freaky. A horror comedy that pokes fun at the slasher genre while also drawing heavy inspiration from Disney's Freaky Friday. This one was probably the most pure joy I had watching a movie this year. And this is a year where I got to see Godzilla and King Kong beat the snot out of each other. So that ought to say how much joy this movie gave me. So Vince Vaughn plays a slasher killer who accidentally swaps body with a teenage girl, Millie, played by Catherine Newton. Now Millie has to race against time to swap back or be stuck forever in the body of a killer. At the same time, said killer is wreaking havoc all across Millie's life. The performance in this movie are just absolutely fun. The humor lands. The slasher action is on point. It's perfectly tongue-in-cheek. If you like horror, this is required viewing, especially if you have a history of watching stuff like, the Halloween series or the Friday the 13th series. You recognize the sort of theme, the music that they're playing, so to speak. But it's a wonderful variation on that theme. Pure joy from start to finish, and a nerdy winner for sure, Chris.
Yeah, I may actually have to check this one out. I'm not scared of horror anymore, and I'm a huge Vince Vaughn fan. I'm also intrigued by the portrayal or the performance of Catherine Newton, kind of to get myself ready for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, as she is now the new Cassie Lang. So, kind of some preview work there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think you'll be disappointed with this one. It's a crap ton of fun, man. All right, Chris. Best nerd flick. What have you got?
So, as I said, this was really a struggle for me. And the one that I'm going to award it to, I just watched in prep for this episode because I've heard so many good things about it. I just watched this a couple of days ago because I made a list of all the nerd flicks that I watched over the past year, and I could not giving an overwhelming endorsement. I had a heck of a lot of fun, as we talked about, watching Mortal Kombat, but I felt like the Cole Young storyline really hamstrung that, and I could not give it to that for that reason. Godzilla versus Kong was a heck of a lot of fun too, but those darn humans really ruined that. So I couldn't give a ringing endorsement for best nerd flick. There was also something else that came on at HBO Max, but that I can't even remember the name of it. But for me, the best nerd flick that I just watched the other day, based on a lot of recommendations that I got from friends, is Dave. It's based on a Greg Rucka book. So, you should love this, man. The Old Guard on Netflix. And we just talked about in the news segment how Netflix always, I feel like Michael Corleone, every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in. Netflix pulls me back in with stuff like The Old Guard. Now, The Old Guard tells the tale of these immortal warriors who have lived for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and they just regenerate. They will die, and then immediately their wounds will heal. And they are trying to avoid being tracked by the government or corporations that would exploit their DNA. And the cast for this is just top notch. I mean, Charlize Theron, what else can we say about this woman? Nerds know just how perfect that she is. And she plays Andy, the kind of the boss, the oldest of the immortals. And she's such a bad A when it comes to action flicks. And this is just right in that same vein. Another reason this movie came on my radar is a lot of people have fan cast Kiki Lane, who plays Nile, as their ideal Storm for the upcoming, MCU. So that went on my radar, and she is very strong here as well. Matthias Schoenaerts plays Booker, who has a kind of checkered past and backstory. He's very think Tom Hardy in Inception, that character. Marwan Kenzari was probably my favorite character, kind of a supporting character as Joe. Luca Marinelli plays Nikki. Chiwetel Ejiofor is always amazing. He plays Copley. And then Harry Potter fans will recognize Harry Melling. Dudley Dursley himself plays the villainous Merrick. So this was just a lot of fun, and I immediately went to Comixology and purchased the collected issues of the Old Guard. Greg Rucka, that's a name that I immediately recognized, so I can't wait to read the books because this was super action packed and super emotionally like edge of your seat suspense, and I absolutely adored it. So the Old Guard is my best flick for the nerdies this year.
And it sounds amazing because you already said the words that mean the most to me right there, and that's Greg and Rucka. I cannot believe that this sucker has flown right past me. I did not realize that this was based on Rucka's work, but lo and behold, I'm here for it. Now I want to watch this. Can we wrap this up, Kris? Because I have some Greg Rucka work to look at.
All right, now we're getting into a couple of individual performances. Dave, who's your best actress this year?
This might be almost too expected, but I'm going to keep it brief because I could, talk about this nonstop. The nerdy, for me at least, goes to Elizabeth Olsen in WandaVision. I mean, I don't have enough superlatives to describe her work in this series. She effortlessly transformed her performance in each episode to match a different sitcom era. The skills involved in that performance cannot be overstated. And I knew I would love her performance from episode 1. She so very perfectly captured the acting, the rhythm, the cadence of a 1950s sitcom. She started strong, and she never quit. Her performance sold me on the entire series. I was there for Elizabeth Olsen. So, Elizabeth, the nerdy is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a huge Bewitched fan, so I was immediately hooked, and I was furious. They did give us, 2 episodes to begin with, but I was furious when we didn't have more because her performance is just that strong. It's just really a testament to her craft, to her abilities as an actor, to be able to convey such a complex character, to give us some of the most emotionally resonating moments that we've ever had in the MCU. And I can't think of a better way to kind of kick off this new kind of chapter in the MCU, where instead of, relying solely on big budget, blockbuster films, we're kind of turning the page and going into these Disney Plus series. And we started off, I think, in pitch perfect fashion. And that is wholeheartedly on her shoulders and that of Paul Bettany, and also as Tiana Paris as Monica Rambeau, who is an absolute revelation.
Yeah, and makes you look forward to, the Marvels coming soon. So something to look forward to there. Now, Kris, best actress in your book, who gets the nerdy?
Dave, you're going to be happy with this choice. I'm double dipping. Journey Smollett in Lovecraft Country as Letitia effing Lewis, as she would say. It's just a powerhouse performance. It makes you laugh. It makes you cry. Just that it's that one of those seminal female lead performances that just stays with you days, months, years after you watch it. You think every time that I see Journey Smollett on something, I think immediately into how her portrayal made me feel. I then, after binging all of Lovecraft Country, I then watched Birds of Prey, and it was just like more and more of the same, and it was just delightful. And now I just want her to be cast in everything. Bring her to the MCU, please. Kevin Feige, back up the Brinks truck, because she's absolutely perfect, and I will fight you for the number 1 fan spot.
Okay, well, I guess we're going to have our own version of Celebrity Deathmatch and get some clay figures going and see if we cannot settle this debate. Yeah, she's absolutely fantastic, and I echo wholeheartedly everything you just said.
All right, now let's give the dudes some love. Who's your best actor?
I, too, am double dipping, and I'm going to give this one to Vince Vaughn in Freaky. This one was easy. I loved Freaky so much. It wasn't a stretch to say that Vince Vaughn deserved the nerdy for his performance as a teenage girl trapped in the body of a fully grown male serial killer. Vaughn's brand of comedy has never really been a favorite of mine. I enjoyed Dodgeball tremendously, but really more for all the characters around him than for Vaughn himself. But here, his comedic timing is perfect. And you gotta love it because he totally commits to the role. I'd argue as a comedian, he's never been better than in Freaky. He's menacing when he needs to be as a slasher. He does the slasher bit well, sure, but it's really his moments as a teenage girl that steal the show. So kudos, Vince, you won me over, and you totally deserve a nerdy for your performance as a teenager trapped in the body of an aging male serial killer.
See, I'm a huge Vince Vaughn fan. Really, particularly that real stretch that Apatow type films had in the mid 2000s, particularly The Breakup for me is one of those heartbreaking but hilarious comedies. The dinner scene with his brother-in-law, where he's doing the a cappella version of Owner of a Lonely Heart, is one of the funniest things I've ever seen on a screen. And just the way that he plays straight the whole time during that dinner scene, oh man, it's just one of the best. So I'm definitely okay. You sold me. I gotta check this movie out.
Yeah, totally worth your time, man. Can't say it often enough. Now, Chris, who's your best actor? I really like your choice here.
Yeah, so I kind of went kind of left field here, but Stephen Yeun's portrayal of Mark Grayson Invincible was just one of the most. I might get emotional just talking about it. And I thought that I was ready to watch Invincible on Prime. I've watched the whole series, highly recommend it. It was almost my series of the year, best in shows. But Lovecraft Country, I just felt so strongly about it. But what Stephen Yeun was able to do as the protagonist in the face of everything that happens, I'm really trying not to spoil the series. J.K. Simmons is finishes a hair second, so he would have been my other choice for best actor. That entire voice cast is just incredible. I read the first, in prep for the show, I read the first 4 trade paperbacks, and I thought that I was ready, and I was not ready. And yes, Omni-Man, does all these things in the story that really just make you feel something. And you're like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this happen in a comic or a comic book show before. But it is particularly Stephen Yeun's work here that just really just resonate. And it's something that I think both of us adore about teenage superheroes and this eternal optimism, and in the face of the worst possible thing happening, you still choose to believe in hope and believe in good. And in the year that we have had with COVID and a worldwide pandemic and a lot of things that have just been really, really crappy, Mark Grayson as a character is just truly inspirational to me. So and that is without a doubt because of the work of Stephen Yeun. And like I said, the entire voice cast from J.K. Simmons to Sandra Oh as Debbie Grayson, I think was an upgrade of the character version, to be honest, at least with what I've read. Didn't have a lot of agency, but Sandra Oh just brought that character to life in just a revolutionary way. Mark Hamill is there as Art. I mean, it's just a pitch perfect cast, and Stephen Yeun is the crown centerpiece of that cast.
To my great shame, I have not watched Invincible yet. I will say, however, that I'm deeply familiar with the comic book series. I think it's actually far superior to Robert Kirkman's other very well-known work, The Walking Dead. It's probably one of my all-time favorite series, period. So it's kind of regrettable I haven't had a chance to check out the cartoon yet. However, I can totally see why Stephen Yeun would be the recipient of your nerdy. He's absolutely inspired casting. I can totally see him pulling off this character. And I can't wait to check out the series, Chris.
Yeah, for sure. And as The Walking Dead, at least the first time around, just wasn't my cup of tea. Now that I'm, more into horror, more open-minded about it, maybe I'll revisit it. So I'm not very familiar with his work, but I completely just immediately won me over right away. All right, Dave. So this category, I think we had a little bit of a mix-up in best streaming content. I was thinking what app, as far as streaming wars which app has the best content, so you can kind of pick and choose because it's hard to have them all. But we also kind of went in a different direction as what was like the best streaming surprise, programming wise.
Okay, so I will actually go against the grain in a time period where there's so many different streaming platforms. I'm going to still hand it to Netflix. I think Netflix has delivered a lot of really good content from, the last season of Mystery Science Theater 3000 to the continued survival of Lucifer, an absolutely fun show that actually is getting ready to premiere the second half of its 5th season, I believe, and is still going to get a 6th season, which is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, God, I thought they were ending with 5. Oh, yay.
Oh, they were supposed to, and then they did a last-minute announcement that they're going to give it another, I think, 8 episodes to go a little further with their story, which I think is absolutely fantastic. It's so rare that Netflix actually renews a series, surprisingly, rather than cutting it short. So
hence my surprise.
Yeah, so I'll totally take this as a victory. But the surprise that I came across on Netflix that I liked the most was probably a show called Evil. This show originally airs on CBS, but as usually goes, I really stick with streaming platforms predominantly. So the show is about Dr. Kristen Bouchard, a psychologist primarily employed by the Queen's DA's office. And she falls in with a priest in training, David Acosta, who's played by Mike Coulter of Luke Cage fame. He's a professional assessor. His job is basically to look at claims of stuff like demonic possession, miracles, and the like, and assess whether those claims have validity. And she ends up actually working for him, sort of trying to debunk some of the claims that come across his desk. This show is so super creepy. It keeps you guessing. It deals with complex matters of faith, what it all means. A lot of the stuff that happens in the show is gloriously ambiguous and open to interpretation. It made my horror-loving heart beat faster. So between, discovering evil, between the continued existence of Lucifer and those final episodes of Mystery Science Theater 3000, I think Netflix still gets my vote as the streaming platform to watch. The nerdy is yours, Netflix. Now use your powers for good and not evil, okay?
So as far as for me, the streaming content surprises that I'm right there with you. The MST3K, the last episodes on Netflix, I go back to, like, it's something I'll put on the TV to help me, just relax and feel good. There was also a couple on Prime Video that I was able to find the throwback issues. Now, Netflix used to have some old MST3K collections that they have now done away with, so that hurts. But there's a couple on Prime Video that Santa Claus Invades the Martians is on there. There's one that's my particularly favorite episode I've ever seen, is this weird kind of indie film of like this kind of Bigfoot in Arkansas. I can't remember the name of it, but it's just hilarious. It's how horrible the movie is. But as far as what offers the best bang for buck streaming content, I'm going to give it to Disney Plus. For the sole sake of shows like WandaVision, and The Mandalorian and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, just appointment television every Friday. You got to be there or you're going to risk spoilers and, fan theories having to wait. For God's sake, we had people swearing up and down that freaking Mephisto was going to show up in a television series. Literally the devil was going to show up in a Disney Plus series. That's how crazy the fan theories went. And just all the speculation and it was just so much fun. I am enjoying the Bad Batch as well. I know that I had my reservations about going back to the same time period, but it's interesting enough, and with regular content, I'm really happy with my Disney Plus subscription.
And I can totally see why Disney Plus would deserve this. They came sort of out of nowhere. They've done really, really great original shows, a lot of good original content, and they did bring something back that really Netflix should be considering as well. I totally miss having the breaks between episodes for a week, and the possibility for discourse and speculation that the bulk content drops of Netflix just don't allow for. So although Netflix kind of edged it out for me this time, I do think that there's a lot of good stuff going on with Disney Plus, and I think Netflix can learn a thing or two from the house that the mouse built.
For sure. All right, we have come to our final 2 awards, and we're heading back to the world of comics, I guess. But we're going with Writer of the Year and Artist of the Year. Dave, first up, this is no surprise. This was probably the easiest one for you to award. Who is your Writer of the Year?
I do pray at the altar of N.K. Jemisin. The best DC comic book by far this year was Far Sector. Period. Come at me, I'll fight you. It's the best book that DC has put out. Huge credit for this amazing book goes to writer N.K. Jemisin. It makes total sense that she should win a Nerdy for her work. Far Sector tells the story of a new Green Lantern, Jo Mullein, as she learns the ropes of her unique ring and navigates the political and social powder keg of the city enduring, a massive metropolis of 20 billion people. The city has maintained peace for over 500 years by stripping its citizens of their ability to feel. As a result, violent crime is virtually unheard of, and murder is non-existent. Until now. Jo Mullein has almost instantly become my favorite Green Lantern character. The world of the city enduring is complex and fascinating. The writing is whip-smart and totally captivating. Big credit also goes to Jamal Campbell's art here. Far Sector is just such a banger of a book. The best DC has to offer right now. The book is getting ready to come to an end with its final issue 12. And as far as I'm concerned, DC needs to get a big trash bag full of cash and just deposit that at N.K. Jemisin's door and ask her to continue writing this character, because it is the best thing that DC has produced in the last 12 months, Chris.
Well, I totally agree with your award here. And I have been lighting incense and candles and repeating my mantras in hopes that N.K. Jemisin and Jamal Campbell would come over to the other side and write a Storm solo. So she's like the best in the biz, especially when it comes to like terms of sci-fi. Like, well, and that's her background, so she knows what she's doing. And having a writer with those kind of chops behind a character that I love, like Storm, would just be a dream come true. And Jamal Campbell's art to boot, like it's just like the perfect dream team. And I will say, DC better not screw this one up, because we'll be waiting at the Marvel squad.
Yeah, I'll fight you for this one, Chris. You may not have her. All right, Chris, who is your writer of the year?
So I previously kind of shed a tear for this one, but one of my favorite books of the past year, X Factor, was unceremoniously canceled with an announcement of a new book. Now, Leah Williams is taking on the trial of Magneto, but her book, her run on X Factor, is coming to a close with just the 10th issue. It's sold very well, and it's it's almost my book for like little comic that could, but like it's bigger than that. And I've previously nerd commended it. It's basically like a CSI in the Marvel world of, why are these people dying? They're investigating murders. So it's just really a fascinating book. And I think like the strongest, endorsement I can give to a writer is they make you care about characters, and they make you invest in characters, especially ones that you have little to no previous experience with, or you don't really care for previously. And the work that she has done with this roster of mutants that fit those categories, I either didn't know them previously or didn't really care for them. I am now like a huge fan of North Star. I added his marriage and relationship with Kyle as one of the 3 best in comics. I mean, like, that just doesn't happen, and that's primarily due to her work on the title. So Polaris has been a household name for quite some time, but she does great work with her. Prodigy is just a fascinating character that I had no previous experience with. Daka Nakahiro, the son of Wolverine, has been one of the most interesting revelations of a character that I've seen, a character that I really didn't care for. It was just like Wolverine light. It was just his kid, so that wasn't really, but he's fascinating in this title. And to see it come to an end is just heartbreaking. But she also does work on a book that got previously canceled, unfortunately, on The Amazing Mary Jane. That was really fun and kind of off the beaten path type of title. So she will be writing The Trial of Magneto, one of my all-time favorite characters in all of comics. So I'm definitely picking that one up. But thank you to Leah Williams for your work on X Factor. And she is my writer of the year.
And this book does sound really good, and I've seen a lot of upset across social media that X Factor was canceled. It's so regrettable when a series gets cut short, especially when a reason is not readily apparent. So kudos to Leah Williams for her fantastic work on X Factor.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of kind of speculation. It's no surprise, or it's no secret that a lot of mutant fans flock to those titles because they believe that mutants are coded as Black characters or coded as queer characters, and the subtext is very, very strong for queer characters, and I've always kind of flocked to creators. Leah Williams herself being a bisexual woman, like have a different backstory than me that can tell stories that I can't, or like enlighten me on experiences that I could never have. And so this book was really kind of pushing the boundaries, with like trans storylines, and for it to be unceremoniously canceled like that, I think that was a lot of like the uproar and the hurt feelings on social media.
Yeah, I can imagine.
All right, Dave, final category, the final nerdy of the night / day, depends on when you're listening, but we're recording at night. Dave, who is your artist of the year?
So I recently reviewed the science fiction graphic novel Black Star for the nerddaily.com. And it is the debut graphic novel by writer Eric Glover, who almost got my nerdy for writer of the year. I want to give a nerdy to the artist here, Ariel Jovellanos. So scientist Hopper North is a woman on a mission to travel to the planet Ilios with a small team to recover an alien flower. The plant holds the key to curing cancer. Her ship is caught in an asteroid storm and crashes on Ilios. North survives and has to brave 100 kilometers of alien wilderness to reach a reserve shuttle fit for one passenger. She's shocked to discover she's not the only survivor of the crash. The team's wilderness expert, Sam Parrish, is also making her way toward the shuttle. The race is on to see who can reach the shuttle first and who will be left behind to die in the inhospitable summer of Ilios. Jovellanos is absolutely fantastic. Her art is expressive. It manages to go long stretches without dialogue and still perfectly conveys the emotion. Her work came out of nowhere for me and instantly hooked me. I cannot wait to see what she does next. She is definitely an artist to watch. I hope she gets all the work that she could ever ask for. She's so much fun.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I ordered this one and it came in, and even just the cover and the first few pages that I've read, it's beautifully atmospheric, and it like almost like you feel like you're the oxygen in your lungs is seizing up because you feel like you're living through that. And I think that's the testament to any true artist, is like they make you feel like you're in that world.
Yeah, and she does a fantastic job at that, Chris. All right, now who is your artist of the year, Chris?
This artist really has captured my imagination, and it's really interesting. We've talked quite a bit about horror tonight, but the inflections of horror in his art is undeniable. My artist of the year has got to be Pat Gleason on Amazing Spider-Man, particularly the Last Remains storylines and arcs with Kindred. It's just the way that he draws that character with like those centipedes coming off of him and like the bandages. It's just absolutely horrifying in the best possible way. He's really just a game changer. I also love the way that he draws Spidey in costume with those large eyes. That was one of my favorite things about, individuals like Todd McFarlane and Eric Larson in the 90s, those oversized Spidey eyes into even Ultimate Spider-Man by Bagley. I love the big eyes. I don't know what it is. It's like the long ears for Batman, the big eyes for Spidey. But again, Pat Gleason is really changing the game. Really came on strong. I know that he's worked quite a while at DC, and so we're happy to have him on the ASM team. But I'm I'm against the grain, and I think you are too, Dave, when it comes to the Nick Spencer run. I thought it was a very much needed breath of fresh air. All respect to Dan Slott, but it was a very much needed breath of fresh air on the title. And it's a slow burn, but for Pete's sake, we get 2 titles a month from Amazing Spider-Man. So I think Spider-Man fans are being a little bit spoiled here. And I'm loving everything that comes out of ASM.
I'm enjoying it a lot too, and I've been a Patrick Gleason fan for a hot second. As you mentioned, he spent some time at DC, which is where I usually hang my hat, generally speaking, and I've loved his work there. So yeah, I can totally see why his work on Amazing Spider-Man deserves a nerdy.
And that's it. That's all, folks. Our nerdies have been handed out. What are your suggestions? What pieces of media are award worthy in your opinions? Be sure to fire off at us at Twitter and Instagram at Nerd Byword on our post for your awards for this year. Stick around after this, our final break. We're going to hit you with our patented Nerd Commendations. Episode 52 travels on. All right, it is time to wrap up this wonderful ceremony. And here we are with more Nerd Commendations. Dave, what do you have for us this week?
So I'm just going to tell you that I'm a nerd for many things. One of those things is thrillers. So HBO Max strikes again with a movie that was released simultaneously in theaters and on HBO Max. And this time it's Those Who Wish Me Dead, starring Angelina Jolie and John Bernthal. Still reeling from the loss of 3 lives, Hannah is a smoke jumper who's perched in a watchtower high above the Montana wilderness. She soon encounters Connor, a skittish boy who's bloodied, traumatized, and on the run in the remote forest. As Hannah tries to bring him to safety, she's unaware of the real dangers to follow: 2 relentless killers hunting Connor, and a fiery blaze consuming everything in its path. Now, I'm a nerd for a good thriller, and I was quote-unquote thrilled to watch this one on HBO Max. I ended up really enjoying it. Now, it's not the greatest thriller ever made or anything, but it is totally worth your time. Jolie turns in a great performance here. The story twists and turns quite well. The child actor is actually really good too, and the ending lands with a strong climax. So, I cannot deny that this was a fun thriller. It's nice to see Tomb Raider herself, Angelina Jolie, still thrill when she steps in front of the camera, Chris.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating to me what Angelina Jolie can do in a performance, because I really think that she brings like this gravitas on the screen, this presence that even elevates like a poorer quality script or like a poorer supporting cast. I mean, like, she was really, really good as Lara Croft Tomb Raider, as regrettable as some of the script and storylines and plots were. And I really am excited. I remember her being in Changeling was a really just fascinating film to watch. So this kind of made me think of that when I saw this. And we had, at least for me, we had a dark horse contender for streaming content, because HBO Max really hit the ground running with these same day releases. Now, the creators, directors may have been a little bit peeved about it, but for us as consumers, it was a home run.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that, Chris. Now, what are you nerd commending this week?
Yeah, I'm going a little bit off the beaten path. I'm a big fan of Ubisoft Connect. So this is a reward service, a reward system that was initially launched as Uplay with Assassin's Creed 2 in 2009, but they rebranded it last year in 2020 as Ubisoft Connect. And it's a reward system for playing games that are under the Ubisoft brand name, that umbrella of games. It offers exclusive in-game content, mainly in the form of cosmetic upgrades like outfits or character customizations. For example, in Immortals Phoenix Rising, you get a special beard. However, in some cases, it does offer rewards that provide both a strategic advantage, like really nice weaponry. Assassin's Creed Valhalla has some nice weapons that you can unlock through this feature. The Division 1 and 2 games as well, and additional gameplay and bonus quests or mission. Valhalla has a mission arc that you can only achieve through this service. As a massive Assassin's Creed fan, this was a must-add from the App Store. It also introduces you to additional games from Ubisoft you may not have been aware of beforehand. For me, I had no idea about Immortals Phoenix Rising until I logged onto this service and saw it was there, and I was like, that sounds interesting and intriguing. Fell in love with that game. The Division games from Tom Clancy 1 and 2 were also a similar situation where I was like, it's made by Ubisoft, maybe it's interesting. And I loved both of those games as well. Part of the rebranding last year was to make an easy-to-use app for phones, and it's much easier to track as far as rewards and challenges go on your phone. Like if you're playing, you got your controller, and then you pause the game and you pick up. You can easily claim rewards, and it automatically uploads into your game. Sometimes you don't even have to restart. They have weekly challenges that help you stay playing even after you finish the campaign. And then it does provide you with a profile and networking options to find other players if online multiplayer is your bag. So, with exclusive rewards for games that you're going to play anyway, Ubisoft Connect is a really easy free addition to your app store. And I have a lot of fun playing with it.
Now, I'm just going to say that I'm shocked that you almost convinced me here to actually use Ubisoft Connect, because to me, so far at least, it's always been this service that pops up that I should log in every time I try to play a Ubisoft game, and I just kind of click it away real fast because it's annoying me. But there actually seems to be a little bit something to it, so I might actually have to check this one out, Chris.
Yeah, and I think the Far Cry games are under that umbrella as well. So I think you nerd commended Far Cry Primal, and I think there's some rewards in that game as well.
Oh, very nice.
All right, that wraps up our 52nd episode. 1 year. It's been a year. I guess we're going for the new 52 now, Dave?
I think the time has come.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And again, be sure to hit us up with your nerdy awards on social media at Nerd Byword on both Instagram and Twitter.
And if you like what you just heard, please be sure to give us a review and a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting platform. We are, of course, available wherever podcasts can be found: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and, of course, our very own website, nerdbyword.com.
And we have some very exciting content coming up for you in the next few weeks. If you have ideas for episodes, be sure to chime in as well. And as always, stay well and stay nerdy.
The Nerd Byword is written and produced by Kris and Dave, two nerds with a love of all things pop culture. The podcast features music by Al Jimenez and show art by Ashery Design. Find us at nerdbyword.com and wherever podcasts are available.